It was a small and peaceful neighborhood, the kind of place where everyone knew each other, and children rode their bicycles in the evening while parents chatted by the park benches. For years, nothing unusual had ever happened there, but one autumn month, fear slowly began to spread among the people. It started when 5 large German shepherds appeared near the town park. At first, people thought someone had abandoned them or that they were lost pets searching for their owner. They looked strong, proud, and beautiful, but something about them was different. Their eyes were sharp, alert, and cautious, as if they didn't trust anyone. At first, the dogs stayed close to the edge of the woods, watching quietly. But as days passed, their behavior began to change. They chased a jogger one evening, barking fiercely until he dropped his water bottle and ran away. A delivery man said they surrounded his truck, growling when he tried to open the door. Parents grew worried. The sound of barking at night kept people awake, and no one dared to walk through the park anymore. Local news started calling them the Wild Five. Every person had a different story about them. Some said they escaped from a dogfighting ring. Others claimed they were military dogs gone rogue. Children whispered scary tales at school, saying the dogs had glowing eyes and could smell fear. Soon the park became empty, and even birds seemed to avoid the area. But in a small white house near the edge of the park, there lived a 7-year-old girl named Lily and her parents. Lily was a bright, curious child who loved animals more than anything else in the world. She had a habit of feeding stray cats, rescuing injured birds, and talking to butterflies as if they could understand her. While everyone else spoke of the German shepherds with fear, Lily didn't feel scared. She often stood by her bedroom window, watching them from a distance. Every evening, just before sunset, the 5 dogs appeared near the fountain in the middle of the park. They stayed together like soldiers, walking in formation, never separating from one another. The biggest one had a scar above his right eye, and Lily quietly named him Max. The others she called Shadow, Duke, Bella, and Rusty. She noticed something unusual. Even though they barked at people, they never harmed anyone seriously. They seemed more scared than dangerous, like they were protecting something invisible. One cold evening, Lily's father came home talking to her mother in a worried tone. The town council had decided to call animal control. He said the dogs would probably be captured soon. Lily's heart sank. "But Dad, what if they're just lost?" she asked. Her father sighed and said softly, "Maybe they are, sweetheart, but they're scaring people. No one knows what they'll do next." That night, Lily couldn't sleep. She kept looking out of her window where the moonlight touched the wet grass and shadows of the trees danced with the wind. Suddenly, she saw movement near the park fence. The dogs were back. It was raining lightly, and they looked soaked and tired. Max was limping slightly, and one of the smaller ones lay down under the old bench, shivering. Lily pressed her face against the glass. Something inside her told her they weren't monsters. They were frightened, hungry, and cold. While everyone saw danger, she saw sadness. The next morning, the news spread that animal control had tried to trap them but failed. The dogs had broken free, escaping into the woods again. "They're too smart," one officer said. People began locking their gates and avoiding the park road. Only Lily remained calm. She kept drawing pictures of the dogs in her school notebook. 5 strong figures standing proudly together, with the words, "They just need love," written under them. One afternoon, when Lily's parents were at work, she sat by the window again, watching the drizzle fall. The dogs came back, moving slower this time. Max looked weaker, his fur muddy and wet. Lily felt her heart ache. Without thinking too much, she went to the kitchen, packed a few sandwiches in her lunchbox, and put on her yellow raincoat. Her grandmother's words echoed in her head. "Kindness never goes wasted." She quietly stepped out of the house, her tiny boots splashing through the puddles. The rain had made the air smell like wet leaves and earth. As she reached the edge of the park, a few neighbors saw her and gasped. "Lily, go back inside," one shouted. Another woman tried to run toward her, but Lily just waved her hand and smiled softly. She didn't run or act afraid. Instead, she walked slowly, her umbrella trembling a little in her small hand. The 5 dogs noticed her. Their heads turned sharply. Max stood in front, his fur dripping, teeth slightly bared. The sound of his low growl echoed in the empty park. Lily stopped walking. Her heart was beating fast, but she didn't step back. She took a deep breath and whispered softly, "It's okay. I won't hurt you." The people watching from their windows froze in fear. No one could believe what they were seeing. A little girl standing just 20 feet away from 5 large dogs everyone had feared for weeks. The smallest one, Bella, whimpered softly and lowered her head. Lily smiled and knelt down, opening her lunchbox. She placed one sandwich on the wet ground and gently pushed it toward them with her shoe. For a few long seconds, no one moved. The rain fell harder and thunder rumbled faintly in the distance. Max took a cautious step forward, sniffed the air, and looked into Lily's eyes. She didn't blink. Her calmness surprised even him. Then slowly he reached the sandwich and sniffed it. Instead of growling, he wagged his tail once, just once, but it was enough to make everyone gasp. The other dogs followed his lead, forming a circle around the food. Lily smiled wider and whispered again, "Good boys. You're just hungry, right?" Her soft voice mixed with the sound of rain. One of the dogs sneezed and she giggled quietly. Max looked at her again and something in his eyes changed. The wild look was gone. For the first time, they seemed like pets again. Confused, loyal, and waiting for kindness. From the nearby houses, people peeked through their curtains. Some were crying, unable to believe what they were seeing. A man whispered, "She's talking to them." And they're listening. Lily stayed there for several minutes, watching the dogs eat slowly. She didn't try to touch them, only stood nearby with her umbrella, making sure they weren't afraid. When the lunchbox was empty, she said softly, "I'll come back tomorrow, okay?" And began walking back home. The dogs didn't chase her. They didn't bark. They just watched quietly as she disappeared into the misty rain. Max even took a few steps forward as if he wanted to follow, but then stopped and sat down. That night, the entire neighborhood talked about what they had seen. Some said it was impossible. Others called it a miracle. But one thing was certain. The girl everyone thought was too young to understand fear had done something no adult dared to try. Lily's parents hugged her tightly when they found out. Half angry and half amazed. "You could have been hurt," her mother said with tears in her eyes. But Lily simply smiled and replied, "They weren't angry. They were just lonely." From that day, the story of Lily and the 5 German shepherds began to spread quietly across the neighborhood. For the first time in weeks, people started hoping that maybe, just maybe, those dogs weren't the monsters they thought they were. And deep inside, even the most frightened neighbors couldn't deny one thing. The little girl had seen something no one else did, the fear behind the bark. The next morning came with a golden sun, and the park looked peaceful again. The rain had washed the streets clean, leaving the air fresh and cool. But for most people, the fear still remained. Parents still warned their children not to go near the park. They whispered about the Wild 5 like it was a curse, as if the dogs were waiting to attack again. Yet one little girl felt no fear at all. Lily sat by the window, waiting for them to return. She kept thinking about the moment when Max, the biggest German shepherd, had wagged his tail after eating her sandwich. It had been just one small move, but it had changed everything for her. That night she had seen something gentle in his eyes. It wasn't anger. It was confusion and sadness. Her parents, however, had different thoughts. Her mother had stayed up late, worried and upset. When Lily came downstairs for breakfast, her mother folded her arms and said, "You are never going near that park again, young lady. Do you understand?" Lily nodded quietly, but her heart whispered something else. After breakfast, she sat with her crayons, drawing a picture of the 5 dogs. She drew them standing together, and in front of them stood a small girl with an umbrella. She smiled at the drawing and whispered, "You'll be okay soon." By afternoon, Lily's father came home early. He worked at the local library and had heard everyone talking about his daughter. Some people called her brave, but others said it was foolish. "People are scared," he told his wife. But what she did, no one else could. Her mother sighed. "She's just a child. What if those dogs had hurt her?" That evening, while the sky turned orange, Lily heard barking in the distance. Her heart jumped. She ran to the window and saw them again, 5 dark shapes near the fountain. They weren't moving like before. Max sat down watching the water flow, while one of the smaller ones licked his paw, injured from something. Without saying a word, Lily grabbed a loaf of bread and some boiled chicken pieces her mother had made for dinner. She wrapped them carefully in a napkin and placed them in her lunchbox again. When she stepped outside, her neighbor, Mrs. Green, spotted her. "Lily, don't go there again, sweetie. It's dangerous." But Lily only smiled politely. "They won't hurt me," she said softly and kept walking. The sun was slowly fading when she entered the park. The dogs noticed her right away. Their ears lifted and their tails stiffened. Max stood up first, his body tense but his eyes following her every step. Lily stopped at the same spot she had the night before. She placed her lunchbox on the ground, opened it slowly, and took out the food. "Hi, Max," she said gently, as if greeting an old friend. "I brought you something better today." The other dogs stayed behind him. Max growled softly, but it wasn't the same kind of growl as before. It sounded unsure, almost questioning. Lily knelt down again, breaking the bread into small pieces and throwing them one by one. "See? It's okay," she whispered. The dogs sniffed the air. Then, to her surprise, Bella, the smallest of the group, took a cautious step forward. She was thin, her ribs showing slightly, and her fur looked tangled. Bella sniffed one of the bread pieces, took it, and backed away again. Max didn't stop her this time. Lily giggled softly. "Good girl," she said, her voice warm and kind. From the distance, a man who was walking his own dog stopped to record the moment on his phone. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. A child surrounded by 5 dogs that everyone had feared, and they were calm. After a few minutes, all the food was gone. The dogs didn't bark or run away. They just watched her, tails wagging gently. Lily took a deep breath and said, "You're not bad. You're just lost, right?" Max tilted his head almost as if he understood. Suddenly, Lily's father's voice echoed through the park, calling her name. "Lily, where are you?" He ran toward her, panic in his eyes. When he saw the dogs, he froze. "Lily, move away slowly," he said. But Lily looked at him and smiled. "It's okay, Daddy, they're my friends." Her father wanted to argue, but something in that scene stopped him. The dogs weren't growling. They were calm, peaceful even. He could hardly believe his eyes. That night, word spread even faster than before. The video that the man had recorded was uploaded online, and within hours, hundreds of people had watched it. The comments were filled with shock and wonder. Some called Lily a dog whisperer, while others thought it was dangerous. The next morning, something unexpected happened. Animal control officers came again, this time bringing a van with cages and nets. Lily saw them from her window and ran outside, shouting, "Please don't hurt them." One officer bent down and said gently, "We're not here to hurt them, little one. We just need to make sure no one gets attacked." But Lily shook her head. "They won't attack anyone. They're scared, not mean." The officer hesitated, clearly unsure. The team spread around the park, setting up cages with food inside. As soon as they approached the dogs, Max began barking, his deep voice echoing through the trees. The others followed, forming a protective circle. People stepped back, afraid the dogs would charge. But before anything could happen, Lily slipped through the fence again. She stood between the officers and the dogs, her hands raised slightly. "It's okay, Max, they won't hurt you," she said softly. The barking stopped. The 5 dogs lowered their heads, watching her with calm eyes. One officer whispered, "She's controlling them without even touching them." Lily looked at the officer and said, "Please don't scare them. I can show you they're good." After a long silence, the lead officer sighed and said, "All right, kid. You've got 5 minutes." Lily turned back to the dogs. She sat on the grass, cross-legged, and began talking softly as if telling them a story. No one knew what she said, but the dogs listened quietly. The smallest one lay down beside her. Everyone watched in disbelief. The town mayor, who had come to observe the situation, whispered, "This child is doing what none of us could." Eventually, the dogs lay down completely. The officers slowly moved closer, but Max gave a warning growl. Lily raised her hand and said, "No, they'll come with me." After that, she stood up and walked back toward her house. The dogs followed her like a loyal pack, keeping a few steps behind. The officers didn't dare move. They just watched as the little girl led them away peacefully. Her mother stood at the gate, tears in her eyes, not knowing whether to scold or hug her. When Lily reached home, she whispered, "They just needed someone to believe in them." The news spread across the entire town. People stopped calling them the Wild 5. They began calling them Lily's Pack. In the following days, the dog stayed near her house, sleeping by the gate. Neighbors who used to lock their doors now came to watch them quietly from across the street. Slowly, the fear that once filled the town began to fade. Lily had done something no one expected. She had turned fear into trust. And in her small heart, she knew she would keep helping them until everyone saw what she saw, that even the wildest hearts can be gentle when met with kindness. The next few days changed everything in the little neighborhood. People who once avoided the park began to peek out of their homes again. The The story of Lily and her pack spread across the town, and even the local newspaper wrote about it. Everyone wanted to know how such wild dogs could turn calm in front of a 7-year-old girl. Some said it was luck, some said it was a miracle, but Lily believed it was something simple: kindness. Every morning she walked to the park carrying a small basket of food. The 5 German shepherds were always waiting for her near the fountain. Max, the biggest one, would stand first, his tail wagging softly as soon as he saw her. The others followed his lead. Lily would talk to them as if they were her classmates, telling them about school, her drawings, or what her mother cooked for dinner. The dogs listened quietly, sometimes tilting their heads, sometimes letting out soft sighs. Her father often stood by the gate watching. He still worried, but deep inside he admired the strange bond between his daughter and the animals. He noticed how Max always stayed between Lily and anyone else who approached. It was like he was protecting her, not threatening others. One afternoon, Lily's father decided to bring his camera. He wanted to take some pictures to show animal control that the dogs were not dangerous. While he was taking photos, he noticed something odd. Around Max's neck, hidden under thick fur, there was a piece of torn leather and part of a collar. When Max bent down to drink water, a small metal tag glimmered in the sunlight. Lily's father called softly, "Lily, come here." "Look at this." She knelt beside Max, who didn't move away. Carefully, her father brushed the fur aside. The tag was dirty and bent, but a few letters were still visible. It said, "Max, Unit K9 37. Lily's eyes widened. "K9? What does that mean, Dad?" Her father felt a chill run through him. He remembered hearing stories years ago about police dogs that went missing during a fire at a training center outside town. Could it be the same ones? That night he stayed up late searching on the internet. After some time, he found an old article with a headline that read, "Police K9 Unit Lost During Forest Fire. 5 service dogs missing." The picture attached showed 5 German shepherds standing proudly beside their handlers. He zoomed in and froze. The biggest one in the picture had the same scar above his eye as Max. The next morning, he showed the article to Lily. Her mouth fell open. "Dad, it's them. Max and his friends," she said excitedly. Her father nodded. "Yes, they weren't wild at all. They were heroes once. They must have run into the forest during the fire and lost their handlers. They've been alone ever since." Lily looked out the window where the dogs were resting by the park bench. No one helped them because everyone was scared, she whispered sadly. That afternoon, animal control returned, this time with a group of reporters. The officers had heard about the collar tag too and wanted to confirm the story. When they arrived, the dogs immediately became nervous. They barked and stood close together, forming a line in front of Lily. People watching from a distance thought trouble was coming again. One officer raised his hand and said, "Step back, kid." But Lily didn't move. She stood still, her small hands clutching the edge of her dress. "It's okay, Max, they're here to help," she said softly. Her voice cut through the noise. The barking slowed down. Max looked at her, then at the officers, and slowly sat down. One by one, the others followed. The park fell silent except for the soft sound of wind moving through the trees. The lead officer, an older man named Captain Morris, lowered his net and walked closer. His face softened as he knelt near Max. "This one? He looks familiar," he murmured. He reached into his bag and pulled out a photo. It was of him and a young German shepherd years ago. "Max?" he whispered. Max sniffed the man's hand, his tail twitching slightly. Then, as if recognizing an old friend, he licked the captain's wrist once. Tears filled the officer's eyes. "It's him," he said quietly. "He was my partner," the crowd gasped. The truth had finally come out. These weren't wild beasts. They were trained K9 dogs, heroes who had served in rescue operations before vanishing after a disaster. They hadn't attacked people because they were evil. They had simply been frightened, confused, and trying to survive. Reporters began taking photos, but Lily didn't care about the cameras. She was kneeling beside Max, hugging his neck. "I told everyone you were good," she said softly. Max pressed his head against her shoulder, calm and gentle. The next few days were filled with excitement. News crews visited the park. The story appeared on television under the title, "Little Girl Tames Missing Canine Unit with Kindness." People from nearby towns came to see the dogs. Many brought gifts like blankets, food, and toys. For the first time in years, the dogs wagged their tails freely. Captain Morris and his team began checking the other dogs for tags. 2 still had faint markings that matched the missing list, Duke and Bella. The others had lost their collars, but the vet later confirmed through microchips that they were indeed part of the same unit. Lily's father helped arrange a safe shelter near the police station. But when they tried to move the dogs into the van, Max refused to step inside. He growled softly and stayed beside Lily. The officers looked puzzled. "He won't go without her," one of them said. Captain Morris knelt down again. "He thinks he's her protector now," he explained. Then he looked at Lily and asked gently, "Would you come with us to the station just for a while?" "It might help him feel safe," Lily agreed. So she climbed into the van, sitting beside Max. The moment she did, he relaxed and lay down near her feet. The other dogs followed quietly. Everyone watching was amazed by how easily they trusted her. At the police station, the officers bathed and examined them. Max and his friends looked different afterward, cleaner, calmer, and even happier. But they never took their eyes off Lily. When she left for a moment to get water, Max whimpered softly until she returned. Captain Morris watched the whole scene with a smile. "You've got a special gift, young lady," he said. "Those dogs were trained to protect humans. Maybe they saw the same heart in you that they once saw in their handlers." Lily blushed and said, "They just needed someone to love them again." From that day forward, the dogs became part of the community again. The police decided not to send them away, but to let them stay under local care. A small park area was fenced and turned into a training and play space where people could visit them. Lily came every day after school, bringing treats and sitting with them for hours. One afternoon, she found an old metal box near the park fountain. Inside it were 5 more dog tags, the names of the entire K9 team along with their badge numbers. It was as if the park itself had been waiting for someone to uncover their story. When she showed the tags to Captain Morris, he wiped his eyes. "Now they can finally be honored properly," he said. A week later, the mayor held a small ceremony. A new sign was placed near the park gate. K9 Heroes Memorial Garden, in honor of the Brave 5. Underneath were the names, Max, Duke, Rusty, Bella, and Shadow. The same evening, Lily stood near the sign, the 5 dogs sitting proudly beside her. The sun was setting behind them, painting the sky orange and gold. People who had once been afraid now clapped and smiled. As the crowd slowly left, Lily sat on the grass, resting her head on Max's shoulder. "You see, Max," she whispered, "you were never wild. You were just waiting for someone to remember who you are." Max gave a quiet bark and the others joined in, not in anger, but in a proud, joyful chorus that echoed across the peaceful park. For the first time in months, everyone listening smiled instead of running away. And that night, as the stars filled the sky, it felt as if the whole town finally understood the truth, that even the fiercest hearts can be gentle once someone chooses to see the good in them. The days after the ceremony brought a new kind of peace to the little town. The same park that once echoed with fearful whispers now rang with laughter, footsteps, and the soft barking of happy dogs. Children began playing again near the fountain, and families came every weekend to bring food for Lily's pack. The 5 German shepherds, once called the Wild 5, had become heroes and friends to everyone. Every morning before school, Lily would run to the park carrying a small basket filled with treats. The dogs were always there waiting for her. Max would greet her first, lowering his head gently as she scratched behind his ears. Bella, the smallest, would wag her tail so fast that it almost looked like she might lift off the ground. Duke and Rusty loved to chase each other around the trees while Shadow stayed close, keeping watch like a quiet guardian. Lily talked to them as she always did. "Good morning, soldiers," she would say, smiling. "Are you ready for your walk?" It made her happy to think of them as heroes, not strays. She had even made little ribbons for their collars, blue for bravery, red for loyalty, and yellow for kindness. Her father helped her tie them on one by one. The townspeople noticed how the dogs had changed. They no longer barked at strangers or chased bicycles. Instead, they greeted people calmly, wagging their tails as children petted them. The old fear had melted away. Mrs. Green, the neighbor who used to shout warnings from her window, now brought dog biscuits every afternoon. Even the local mailman, who had once refused to deliver letters near the park, started stopping by just to give Max a pat on the head. But healing took time, not just for the people, but for the dogs too. Max still sometimes woke up suddenly at night, barking into the darkness, his eyes wide and alert. The noise startled Lily's parents the first few times, but Lily understood. She would quietly step out to the porch, sit beside him and whisper, "It's okay. Max, you're safe now." Slowly he would calm down, resting his head on her lap as the stars twinkled above. The town veterinarian, Dr. Harris, offered to check all 5 dogs for health problems. He found old scars, burns, and signs of long travel, but nothing serious. "They're strong," he said, smiling at Lily. "You must have taken good care of them." Lily beamed proudly. Soon, something beautiful began to happen. The police department started working with the dogs again, not as full-time K-9 officers, but as community helpers. Every Saturday, they visited local schools to teach children about kindness and animal care. The students gathered in the gymnasium, watching in awe as Lily stood beside Max, explaining how patience and love could change even the most frightened heart. The other dogs performed simple tasks, fetching items, sitting on command, and giving high fives. The children clapped and laughed, and teachers called it the friendship program. For Lily, this became the best part of her week. She loved seeing other kids smile when they met the dogs. Once, a little boy who had been afraid of animals came up to her after class. "I touched Rusty's fur today," he said proudly. "He didn't bite me." Lily smiled and told him he never would. He just wanted to know you weren't afraid. The mayor also noticed how much the town had changed. He met Lily's parents one morning and said, "Your daughter brought something precious back to this town, hope." He asked if Lily would help name the new park section they were building beside the memorial garden. She thought about it for a moment and said, "Let's call it the Friendship Field. That's what it became for us." The mayor agreed instantly. As the weeks passed, the 5 dogs began to recover their strength completely. Their fur grew shiny again, their eyes brightened, and they learned to play like family pets. Sometimes they still showed signs of their training, like forming a circle around Lily when a stranger approached, but it was never out of aggression. It was loyalty. They trusted her more than anyone. One cool afternoon, Lily was sitting under a big oak tree with her sketchbook. She was drawing all 5 dogs with the park in the background. The golden sunlight made the whole place look like a dream. Suddenly, she heard a familiar voice behind her. It was Captain Morris. "That's a fine drawing," he said kindly. "Mind if I sit here?" Lily nodded, smiling. "Do you miss them?" she asked softly. He looked at Max and the others playing by the fountain. "Every day," he said, "but seeing them happy again makes it easier." After a pause, he added, "You gave them something none of us could. Peace." Lily looked down shyly. "I just didn't want them to feel alone." Captain Morris smiled. "That's exactly what heroes do, Lily. They help others feel safe again." That evening, a small event took place at the park. The mayor had arranged for new name tags for each of the 5 dogs. The tags shone silver under the lamplight, engraved with their names and the words "Town Guardians." When the tags were placed around their necks, the crowd cheered. The dogs wagged their tails and barked joyfully, as if they knew it was a moment of honor. After the ceremony, Lily sat quietly beside the fountain, her legs crossed, watching the water shimmer under the moon. Max came and sat beside her, resting his head gently on her lap. She stroked his fur and whispered, "You see, Max, everyone loves you now. No one's scared anymore." As she sat there, she thought about how everything had changed, how fear had turned into trust, and loneliness into friendship. The same park that once felt dangerous now felt warm and alive. The sound of children playing mixed with birdsong, and even the old trees seemed to stand prouder. One day, a storm rolled through the town. The wind howled, and heavy rain poured down just like the night Lily had first approached the dogs. Her mother called her inside, but Lily ran to the window. She could see the 5 shapes huddled under the park shelter. She remembered that first night, how scared they had been, and smiled. "You're safe now," she whispered, pressing her hand against the glass. The next morning, the rain was gone and the sky was clear. When Lily went to the park, she found something that made her heart melt. The dogs had gathered twigs and leaves under the shelter, building a little dry corner. In the center of it was one of her old ribbon, the yellow one for kindness. Somehow they had kept it safe during the storm. She laughed softly and hugged Max. "You saved it. You really are my heroes," she said. Soon after, the story spread beyond the town. A local newspaper wrote an article titled, "The Girl Who Healed 5 Heroes." A news channel visited the park to record a segment about Lily and her dogs. She didn't like the cameras much, but she answered every question with honesty. When asked what she learned from all this, she said, "Sometimes, the ones we fear the most just need someone to show them love." Her words touched everyone watching. After the news aired, people from nearby towns sent letters and drawings to Lily. Some shared stories of their own pets. Others thanked her for teaching them to see animals differently. Her parents hung some of the letters on their living room wall, proud of their little girl who had changed so many hearts. Months later, the park became a symbol of kindness for the whole region. The friendship field was filled with flowers planted by volunteers, and a large sign near the entrance read, "Kindness is the strongest leash." Lily's pack still visited every day, protecting the park in their gentle way. Sometimes, when a new stray dog wandered into town, Max would approach it slowly, sniffing carefully before letting it stay near the fountain. It was as if he remembered how it felt to be lost and wanted to help others find peace too. Every night, Lily's father took a photo of her sitting among the dogs as the sun went down. Those pictures became small treasures, reminders of how love could change everything. One evening, as the last rays of sunlight faded, Lily whispered to her parents, "I think they were waiting for me all along." Her mother smiled, brushing her hair gently. "Maybe you were waiting for them too," she said. And that night, when the wind rustled the trees and the fountain softly gurgled, the park no longer felt haunted by fear. It felt alive, glowing quietly under the stars, guarded by 5 loyal hearts and a little girl whose kindness healed them all. The following months turned the little town into a place filled with pride and warmth. The story of Lily and her 5 German shepherds spread far beyond the park and the neighborhood. Reporters came from nearby cities, photographers took pictures of the dogs running joyfully through the fields, and families visited just to see the miracle pack. But to Lily, they weren't famous heroes or news stories. They were still her friends, the ones who once stood alone in the rain, scared and forgotten. Each morning, Lily would walk to the park before school. Max would spot her first, sitting tall like a king, his ears pointed high. The moment he saw her yellow backpack, his tail started wagging. The other dogs followed, barking softly in greeting. She'd laugh every time and say, "Good morning, my brave boys and girls." She still carried a small lunchbox with treats, not because the dogs needed them, but because she loved watching them share. Max always waited for the others to eat first. That was his way of showing leadership, just as he had done with his old K9 team. Over time, Lily's life and the dogs' lives became beautifully connected. Her parents had stopped being afraid. In fact, her father built a small wooden bench near the fountain with a sign that read, "Lily's Spot." That was where she usually sat, reading her school books while the dogs lay around her like guards protecting their queen. People passing by often smiled at the sight. The once empty park was now full of laughter and life again. One day, a teacher from Lily's school came to visit the park with her class. She wanted the students to see the dogs and learn about kindness. The children gathered around Lily as she told them how everything began. She described that rainy night when she first walked toward the frightened pack with an umbrella and sandwiches. The kids listened with wide eyes, and one of them asked, "Weren't you scared?" Lily shook her head. "I was a little," she admitted. "But when I looked at them, I saw they were scared too. I thought maybe they just needed someone to be brave first." The teacher smiled warmly. "And because you were brave, they learned to trust again." After that visit, many children started coming to the park regularly. Some brought snacks for the dogs, others just came to sit quietly and watch them. The park slowly became a place where people talked softly, smiled easily, and felt safe again. Even those who had once complained about noise or fear now felt proud of the story that began right in their own town. One sunny afternoon, something special happened. The mayor arrived with a group of workers carrying wooden posts, fresh paint, and a shiny metal plate. When Lily asked what was going on, he said, "We're putting up a permanent statue to honor your friends." By the end of the day, a beautiful sculpture stood near the fountain. 5 German shepherds standing proudly in a circle, with a small figure of a girl in a raincoat at the center, holding an umbrella. The plaque below read, "The girl who saw kindness where others saw fear." People gathered around, clapping and cheering. Lily stood beside the real Max, who tilted his head and wagged his tail as if recognizing the statue. The moment touched everyone's heart. As time passed, the park became a symbol of hope. Travelers stopped by just to take pictures with the statue. The story reached animal shelters across the country, inspiring volunteers to be patient and gentle with rescued dogs. Some even called it the Lily method, feeding, speaking softly and showing steady love, until trust returned. The local newspaper published another article 6 months later titled, "Kindness That Changed a Town." It showed a photo of Lily sitting with the dogs under a blooming cherry tree. The caption read, "Once feared, now loved, thanks to one little girl." Life felt peaceful, but one winter morning, something unexpected happened. A police car stopped in front of Lily's house. Captain Morris stepped out, smiling warmly. "Good morning, Lily," he said. "We've been working on something special." He opened the car door, revealing a shiny medal shaped like a paw print. It was engraved with the words, "For courage and compassion, presented to Lily Harper." He handed it to her gently. "The police department wanted to thank you. Those 5 dogs were part of our family once, and because of you, they found their way home again." Lily's eyes sparkled. She hugged Max tightly and said, "I just wanted them to feel safe." Captain Morris nodded. "And you did more than that. You helped all of us remember what real courage looks like." That weekend, the police department held a small event in the park. Officers stood beside the dogs, each wearing a new badge on their collars. Max's badge said Honorary Chief, and the others had smaller badges that said Community Helpers. When people clapped, the dogs barked happily, almost like they were saying thank you. After the ceremony, Lily sat on her bench watching the sunset. The golden light reflected off the fountain, and the statue's shadow stretched long across the grass. She thought about everything that had happened, from the first night of fear to this moment of peace. Her heart felt warm and full. As the months turned into years, Lily grew older, but her bond with the dogs never faded. Max began to slow down as time passed, his muzzle turning gray, but his eyes remained bright and gentle. He still followed Lily everywhere, though now his steps were slower. Whenever she sat down, he rested beside her, as if guarding her memories as much as her safety. One spring evening, Lily's father found her sitting quietly at the park again. "You come here every day," he said, smiling softly. "Don't you ever get tired of it?" She shook her head. "No, Dad. When I'm here, I feel like the world is kind." That answer stayed with him for a long time. He realized his little girl had taught the entire town something precious. That kindness doesn't just save others. It changes those who give it. As years went by, new families moved into the neighborhood. Children who had only heard stories about Lily's pack would visit the park, run their hands over the statue and ask, "Is it true?" The older neighbors would smile and say, "Yes, every word." Even after the dogs grew older, they remained loved by everyone. The town took care of them together, feeding, grooming, and making sure they always had warm blankets during winter. When people walked past the park at night, they often saw Max still sitting proudly near the fountain, watching over the place he once guarded with fear, now filled with peace. One chilly evening, as snow began to fall, Lily walked through the park wrapped in a red scarf. Max, though older, followed beside her, his fur sprinkled with snowflakes. The world was quiet, and the only sound was the crunch of their steps on the white ground. She stopped near the statue and smiled. "Look, Max," she whispered. "It's snowing again, just like the night I met you." He wagged his tail slowly and leaned against her leg. Together they stood there under the softly falling snow, surrounded by the memories of a journey that had changed everything. That winter night, the streetlights shone warmly through the trees, and the whole park glowed like a gentle dream. People passing by saw the little girl and her loyal friend and smiled. To them, it wasn't just a sweet picture. It was a reminder that one act of courage can light up even the darkest corners of fear. Years later, when Lily grew into a young woman, the story of the 5 German shepherds remained alive. The park stayed open, the statue stood tall, and the town continued to teach children about kindness every year. New generations grew up hearing about the girl who looked past danger and saw love. And though time passed and seasons changed, everyone who walked through that park could still feel it. The quiet strength of 5 loyal hearts, and the memory of a brave little girl who once approached them with nothing but a lunchbox, a small umbrella, and a heart full of kindness. Because sometimes, miracles don't come from magic or power. They come from something simpler, a child's belief that love can heal anything. And in that peaceful town, under the watchful eyes of Max's statue, kindness never faded. It lived on, just like the memory of the girl who proved that even the wildest hearts can find peace when met with understanding.